Murfreesboro, Tennessee, July 24, 1990. On a sweltering summer afternoon, inside a pale blue house at the end of Granite Ridge Court, Amanda Collins was preparing a birthday cake for her youngest son, Joshua, who had just turned 6. On the table were paper cups with dinosaur prints, plastic chairs in a half circle under the oak tree, and colorful streamers dancing beneath the ceiling fan. 9 children were invited. Neighbors, cousins, and one older boy, Ethan, a 14-year-old relative, had been asked to keep an eye on Joshua while Amanda ran out for a quick errand. She was gone for less than 10 minutes. When she returned, the backyard was still buzzing with laughter and the sticky noise of water balloons and candy wrappers. But Joshua was no longer there. At first, Amanda thought he might be hiding playing some kind of birthday prank. But after 30 minutes of calling his name, searching closets, crawling under the porch, and checking every car on the block, her confusion turned into panic. Police arrived quickly, but they found no sign of a struggle, no sounds reported, no unusual footprints. The back gate was closed. Only a few faint smudges of mud near the back corner of the yard caught attention, just beside the entrance to a crawl space leading to the old furnace room, sealed shut for years. That door had been locked from the inside. Joshua Collins, 6 years old, vanished in the middle of his own birthday party, in daylight, in a yard full of family, and not a single person had heard a thing. The case became one of the longest-running missing child investigations in Rutherford County. No body, no trace, no surveillance footage, none existed in the neighborhood in 1993. The house changed hands, was sold, then left to decay, until one afternoon in the spring of 2023, when someone returned to that same house and heard a soft tapping behind a wall covered in plywood. July 24, 1993. The temperature in Murfreesboro peaked at 94 degrees Fahrenheit. Heat shimmered off the asphalt, clinging to every seam of fabric and breath. At the last house on Granite Ridge Court, a modest birthday party was underway for 6-year-old Joshua Collins. A few dozen balloons, a dinosaur-shaped cake, a cassette player looping a tinny version of Happy Birthday. Amanda, his mother, was working alone. Her husband had died in a car crash in 1991. Today, she managed everything herself. The only help came from Ethan, her 14-year-old nephew, who sat nearby, half watching the kids while glued to his handheld game console. At exactly 3:05 p.m., Amanda stepped out to a nearby convenience store to grab more ice and a tray of snacks. Before leaving, she told Ethan, "Watch your cousin, I'll be right back." He nodded, eyes fixed on his screen. Amanda returned at 3:16 p.m. Everything looked normal. Laughter, water balloons popping, candy wrappers, and the faint whir of the cassette tape. But within minutes, when she began gathering the kids for cake and candles, one green plastic chair was empty, the one with the little dragon print. No one had seen Joshua leave. No door creaked open. No scream. No running feet. Nothing that hinted at a child simply vanishing. Amanda tore through the house, calling his name until her voice cracked. One child said, "I thought he ran inside." Ethan looked pale, stammering, "He was right there, just a minute ago." Police arrived at 3:30 p.m. after Amanda's breathless 911 call. Officers swept through the backyard, bushes, under beds, in attics, behind the neighbors' sheds. They knocked on every door within a 3-block radius. "Have you seen a white boy, brown hair, red t-shirt, denim shorts, about 3'7"? No one had. No one noticed anything strange. A volunteer search group mobilized that same night. At 10 p.m., they combed the grass with halogen beams, peered into storm drains, storage sheds, and even upended trash bins. They found a single deflated red balloon and a faint drag mark along the grass near the furnace hatch, a door, Amanda said, hadn't been opened in years. When officers tried the handle, it wouldn't budge. The latch was locked from the inside. They broke it open. A flashlight swept the crawl space. No one. but the musty air inside smelled freshly disturbed, as if someone had recently exhaled fear into it. That night, Murfreesboro stayed awake. Local stations issued an Amber Alert, the first of its kind in Rutherford County. Joshua's school portrait, printed from a grainy inkjet, was taped to gas stations, church doors, and highway rest stops within a 50-mile radius. But by dawn the next morning, no new leads emerged. And the dinosaur cake still sat untouched, 6 candles unlit, waiting for a breath that never came. In the first 2 years after the disappearance, Amanda Collins never left Murfreesboro. Every morning she brewed 2 cups of coffee out of habit, one for herself. One she placed by the window overlooking the backyard, where Joshua used to sit playing with his plastic dinosaurs. She refused to move, refused to change her phone number, refused every suggestion to start over. Each year on July 24th, she held a quiet vigil in the yard, lighting 6 candles the first year, then 7, then 8. By the 10th year, no one came anymore. In 2005, Amanda sold the house. By then, Ethan had enlisted, her mother had passed away, and the weight of it all had eroded any attempt at normal life. Amanda moved to Chattanooga, then Alabama, then vanished from contact. House 812. Granite Ridge cycled through 4 different owners in 15 years, none of them stayed longer than 3. One left due to divorce. Another, bankruptcy. The fourth, a man named Curtis Lowry, moved out after just 3 months, leaving a note for the realtor. "I can't sleep. There's knocking inside the walls." By 2020, the house stood abandoned. Moss overtook the shingles. Grass rose past the waist. The ground floor windows shattered and were boarded over with warped plywood and rusted mesh. But that same state of decay called someone back, someone who couldn't forget the faint knocking behind the wooden walls. In April 2023, Ethan returned to Murfreesboro. He was now in his early 40s, streaks of gray in his hair, a former firefighter turned night security guard in Louisville. After leaving his last job, he didn't know where to go, but a recurring dream had haunted him. Joshua, standing in a windowless room, reaching out, lips moving silently. One morning, Ethan bought a bus ticket, packed a flashlight and a small tool bag, and went back to the house. April 22nd. Overcast skies. No rain, but the air hung thick and heavy. Ethan climbed over the broken fence, stepped into the backyard, and found himself standing in the past every crack in the concrete, every patch of moss, a thread to childhood. The crawlspace hatch was still there, its hinges rusted through, the door ajar. He didn't enter right away. Instead, he walked along the left side of the house where the laundry room once stood. There, a new sheet of plywood had been nailed over the old wall. Some of the nails had loosened. The wind hissed through a tiny seam. Ethan paused. A faint sound like fingernails scratching gently at wood came from behind the panel. Not rats, not wind. A rhythmic pattern 3 taps, then silence, then again. He whispered, "Joshua?" No reply, only more scratching. Slower this time, closer. His heartbeat thundered, but he didn't run, and for the first time in 30 years, the old door opened. Inside, 812 Granite Ridge. Time felt fractured. Paint peeled in the long vertical strips. A child's handprint was still faintly visible on the door of the old refrigerator. Floor tiles were cracked, exposing the gray cement underneath. Ethan stepped carefully, his flashlight slicing a dull path through air thick with dust and damp. On the left wall of the old laundry room, the place where he'd heard the tapping a sheet of plywood had been nailed up. The corner was rotting. He wedged his crowbar underneath and pried. What lay behind wasn't the backyard as he had expected. It was a drywall partition, a wall that didn't exist in the house's original blueprints. Ethan paused, then leaned in. The seam of the wall bore a faint diagonal crack, like someone had struck it from the inside. He pulled harder. A narrow opening appeared tight, dark, deeper than any space should have been in a residential structure. The passage led to a rectangular chamber, no more than 10 feet long. The ceiling was low. The walls were bare plywood, unpainted. No windows. No exit. In the center sat a small green plastic chair, the kind made for children, printed with a tiny dragon, the same one, missing from the birthday party in 1993. Beneath the chair was an impression in the dust, tiny toe marks, curled into the floor like someone had sat there for a very long time. On the far wall hung a large sheet of paper, pinned with old tacks. Bold letters, written in thick black marker, underlined for emphasis. Do not ask your name. Do not call anyone, only speak when asked. Do not look outside. Do not sleep. Before 10 p.m. Ethan read each line. His spine chilled to the core. He scanned the corners of the room with his light. Near the ceiling, an old vent had been sealed shut with trash bags and duct tape. In the far left corner, a torn pillow lay crumpled. Scrawled across it, in childish pencil handwriting, "My name is Joshua, but don't say it." Ethan collapsed to his knees. Not from exhaustion, but from the wave of fear and recognition rising all at once, after 30 years of silence. He pulled out his phone to call 911. No signal. He stumbled back outside to regain reception, then returned within 25 minutes, accompanied by local police. The room was still there. Except for one detail. The rule sheet was no longer on the wall. On April 24, 2023, the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office officially reopened the case of Joshua Collins. Within 72 hours, a team from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation arrived at 812 Granite Ridge to examine the hidden room. Photos were taken. Samples of dust, soil, fabric, and wall fibers were collected. The area was sealed off. No press conferences, no leaks. The room was built from untreated pine boards, secured with interior-facing nails. No working ventilation, no wiring, no writing aside from what Ethan had described. Most striking of all, not a single construction record from 1978 through the home's 2005 sale mentioned any structure in that section of the house. No renovation permits. And, perhaps more troubling, blueprints for the original structure showed that space as dead air between two load-bearing walls structurally incapable of holding a room. TBI brought in forensic engineers who used thermal imaging and wall-penetrating radar. Their conclusion: the room had been built entirely from the inside, by hand, over a period of weeks or months. No neighbors reported construction sounds. No deliveries of lumber were ever logged. The central question became, who built the room, and why? Investigators reviewed the list of former owners. 3 could not be reached. 1 was deceased. Curtis Lowry, the man who once left a note saying, "There's knocking in the walls," was located in Gallatin, Tennessee. He was under outpatient psychiatric care, suffering from paranoid delusions. When asked about the room, he offered only one sentence: "I didn't open it, but I knew it wasn't built for grown-ups." While combing through the original house sale documents from 1997, an investigator named Hannah Wallace noticed a strange line item: $8,700 paid to a small construction company called North Pine Repairs, LLC, formerly based in Pigeon Forge. The company no longer existed. No website, no tax filings past 1999. But Wallace found a faded invoice in the archived records. It read, "Reinforcement, interior wall containment, privacy class, yellow." Privacy class, yellow, wasn't standard construction language. Cross-referencing old legal records, Wallace found a 1994 case from Knox County. A now-defunct youth rehabilitation center called Meadowbrook had been shut down after reports of children being kept in windowless isolation chambers with no outside contact. One of the contractors hired to build those rooms at Meadowbrook? North Pine Repairs, LLC. At that moment, the Joshua Collins case stopped being a story about a missing boy at a birthday party. It became the first known link to a silent system and underground network of hidden containment rooms, embedded inside ordinary American homes. In early May 2023, the TBI office in Nashville partnered with the Southeastern Division of the FBI to expand the investigation. They established a temporary task force, CTP-17, with one directive: review residential properties retrofitted without permits between 1980 and 2000. On a digital map, red dots appeared, each one representing a home flagged for strange noises, doors to nowhere, or unexplained musty odors. Within 2 weeks, the team identified 12 properties across Tennessee, Kentucky, and South Carolina, potentially containing similar isolation chambers. Even more alarming, 5 of those homes had previously housed minors placed there through referral programs managed by private organizations. Most were framed as faith-based behavioral reform centers or family restoration retreats. Civil case records from the early 2000s revealed that many of these facilities had ties to a now-defunct nonprofit network called Hearthlight Recovery Network. Active from 1985 to 2002, once headquartered in Asheville, North Carolina. Tax records from 1992 showed that Hearthlight received $1.7 million under Special Family Support Initiative, Section 44C. No clear usage documentation. But in one leaked internal memo, a program director wrote, "Ensure no child exits the room before forgetting their name." When the task force cross-referenced architectural layouts from various Hearthlight-linked sites, they discovered a chilling pattern: room proportions, light blocking, ceiling height, chair positioning, and even the posted behavioral rules, all mirrored the room where Joshua had been held. Worse, at least 4 known cases involved children whose real names were never recorded in intake documents. They were referred to only by numbers or nicknames like Blue, C6, or Guest 14. An FBI specialist in extremist religious organizations commented, "This isn't incarceration. This is systematic identity erasure." Investigators found a training manual once distributed within Hearthlight. The cover read, "Sequence Reformatting, Primary Instructional Manual." Inside, 3 stages were described. 1. Isolation. 2. Name removal. 3. Reintroduction. Each stage had its own tasks, timelines, and an absolute rule: no mirrors for the first 30 days. On May 19th, the task force received an anonymous tip. A woman from Texas claimed she had once been placed in a Hearthlight facility in 1993. She didn't remember the route, didn't know who her guardian was at the time. But she remembered one thing clearly. "I sat in a green plastic chair with a dragon on it, and there was a kid in the room next to mine named Joshua. He was never allowed outside." On May 27, 2023, Task Force CTP-17 confirmed the coordinates of a facility formerly associated with the Hearthlight Network, deep in the Nantahala National Forest, North Carolina. The site, once known as Camp Revante, had been shut down after a tax audit in 1998, but was never formally investigated. On modern maps, the area was labeled only as SR41A, access restricted. No official access roads, no signage. No longer listed in any state-managed land registry. On May 30th, a small team investigator, Hannah Wallace, forensic tech Alex DeVries, and senior FBI agent Lester Maynard was flown in by helicopter. The camp sat nestled in a forest basin, hidden by dense old growth and encircled by a rusted mesh fence stretching over 1,000 meters. They had to cut their way in. The entry gate was a collapsed wooden arch, its rotted sign barely legible: Revanta, Redemption Through Silence. Inside stood 5 low cabins, 1 2-story main lodge, a chapel, and a long-abandoned dining hall. The entire camp felt frozen in a moment of deliberate forgetting. On the walls of the bunkhouses, phrases had been carved into the wood scratched by fingernails. Blue 19. No more names. Don't look outside. In a separate wing of 5 rooms, each no larger than a solitary confinement cell, they found windows boarded from the inside and rope-worn grooves in the corners of the beds. In the last room, where the floor tile had collapsed inward, they discovered a hidden cavity beneath. Inside, a rusted tin box containing a photograph and a cassette tape. The photo, faded and grainy, showed two children standing against a wall, a girl with black hair, a boy in a red shirt. Between them sat the same green plastic dragon chair. On the back of the photo, Josh and B, 12, 93, third cycle. The tape was sent to the TBI's forensics lab for audio restoration. After 2 days, they recovered 17 minutes of recording. It opened with the clink of metal, followed by a woman's voice, calm and mechanical, reading scripted questions. You are not your name. You are what you obey. What do you obey? A child's voice responded, hoarse, trembling. The silence. The wall. The rules. At the end of the tape, a stifled sound. Maybe a sob, maybe an attempt to say something more, then static. No one on the team listened to it a second time. In his official report to the FBI, Agent Maynard wrote a single line under his conclusion. I don't believe this is a missing person case. This is a detention case. On June 2, 2023, a woman named Melissa Hartley, age 37, from Amarillo, Texas, walked into the FBI field office in Houston after reading a summary report about Camp Revante. She had previously reached out anonymously, but now she was ready to speak on record. According to her birth certificate, her name wasn't Melissa. Her real name was Brianna Lasky, reported missing from Denver, Colorado, in 1993 at the age of 7, but her legal guardian had never filed a police report. According to her account, sometime in the fall of 1993, she was brought to a place referred to only as a Belief Reformation compound, where the days were filled with recited prayers, solitary cells, and repetitive daily questions like, do you remember who you are? Do you believe your parents were real? What name would you choose if you were starting over? She recalled forbidden dreams, mirrors that were always covered, and guests who arrived at night only to record voices. But what she remembered most vividly was a smaller boy with brown hair who sat quietly behind the wall next to her cell, who never spoke, only tapped 3 times on the wooden partition when she called. His name was Joshua. He was never allowed to say it out loud. Melissa said she was transferred 18 months later to another facility in Utah, then adopted by a family who changed her name, her birthday, and erased every trace of her past. It wasn't until 2020, during an intensive trauma therapy session, that fragments of her memory began to return. When the FBI verified her account, everything matched fingerprints, DNA with a surviving grandmother in Colorado, and even a hospital intake record from November 1993 listing her as B. Lasky. Guardian status undetermined. Melissa, or rather, Brianna, was the only known survivor to walk out of that system with memory intact. But then she gave the investigators a detail that chilled them to the bone. During questioning, when asked about the phrase third cycle, the term scrawled on the back of the Josh and B photograph, she said, that's when they started the name swaps. They picked one child to be the old version and another to become the reformatted one. One would stay, one would leave, but neither would leave with their own name. Agent Maynard asked her, "Are you sure you're Brianna?" She didn't hesitate. "No, I was the one they sent out in his place. I didn't carry my name out. I carried his." On June 6, 2023, TBI audio technicians completed the digitization of the cassette tape recovered from Camp Revante. A small segment at the very end, previously unreadable due to audio distortion, was finally restored after 27 layers of filtering and frequency isolation. At the 1019th second, a child's voice, shaky but conscious, broke through. "My name isn't B. I'm Joshua. I remember my mom." The brief message hit like a blade of ice. It didn't just confirm that Joshua had been at the camp, it confirmed something far more devastating. He was never transferred out. He had been left behind, in a cell, while another child walked free carrying his name. The investigation pivoted. This time, they weren't searching outward. They went back to 812 Granite Ridge, where everything began. On June 9th, the forensics team re-examined the subflooring beneath the house using advanced ground-penetrating seismic scanners equipment previously unavailable due to budget restrictions. The scan revealed a hollow cavity roughly 1.3 meters deep, directly under the living room floor, adjacent to the structural wall. No access point, no visible hatch. They broke the floor open. Beneath a thin layer of concrete lay a flush steel plate sealed without welds, without a handle, covered in bonding cement. It took nearly 6 hours to remove the reinforced edges. When the plate was finally lifted, a burst of cold air surged upward from the darkness. Inside, a square chamber lined with steel. Soundproofed walls, no wiring. In the center, a decayed mattress, and beside it, a fully intact child's skeleton, a red t-shirt, denim shorts. Around the right wrist, a snapped nylon cord wrapped 3 times. Forensics confirmed a 100% DNA match. It was Joshua Collins. He had never left the house. He was taken during the birthday party, led beneath the floorboards, and confined in a sealed steel cell directly under the room where his mother cried every day for 10 years. The cause of death couldn't be definitively determined, no major trauma. But residual tissue analysis indicated extreme dehydration. He may have survived for days, maybe weeks. There was no video, no suspects, no construction permits, no names attached to the chamber's existence. But the TBI's final audio report stated the following. The voice identified as Joshua on the recovered cassette was not recorded at Camp Revante. Acoustic modeling ceiling height, metallic echo characteristics match the steel chamber beneath 812 Granite Ridge. In other words, the tape found at the camp was recorded in the same place Joshua died. On June 22, 2025, Joshua Collins was officially declared deceased 30 years after he was labeled missing. A small memorial was held at Evergreen Cemetery in Murfreesboro. No media, no speeches. Just Amanda Collins, now in her 60s, sitting silently before a modest headstone, etched with the words, Joshua Collins, 1987 to 1993. You were always so close. No arrests were made, no charges filed. The joint summary report by the TBI and FBI concluded that Joshua was a victim of an unauthorized system of containment, one that operated under the guise of reform, implementing what they described as identity reset protocols, a covert practice that quietly existed across the 1980s and 90s. But no names, no faces. Only blueprints, internal memos, and matching rooms, identical designs from Tennessee to Utah, South Carolina to Oregon. Melissa Hartley, legally Brianna Lasky, became the primary witness in an expanded federal inquiry. But even she admitted, I can't point to anyone. I only know how the system worked, and that I didn't leave because I was chosen, but because someone else had to stay. In a closed-door session in Washington that July, a panel of attorneys, lawmakers, and former investigators proposed a federal initiative to re-examine all unsolved child disappearances between 1980 and 2000, marked by residential vanishings, no ransom demands, and no credible witnesses. They called it the First Marker Initiative, aiming to uncover the children erased from memory who never left the places they disappeared from. Amanda gave no interviews. She issued one handwritten note to the investigators. You found my son, but I hope you'll keep looking for the ones no one remembers, because no child should die being called a number. In October 2023, the house at 812 Granite Ridge was demolished. Not sold, not listed. No one wanted to live above a place that had swallowed a life. But in one final interview, Agent Lester Maynard said, The worst part isn't that we didn't know where Joshua was. It's that we stood over him for 30 years and never once heard him call out. One missing child. One faceless system. One crime with no name. And the room, the soundproof room beneath a mother's feet, where the 3 soft knocks never stopped echoing, as if he was never meant to exist at all,